Welcome to the Microsoft Security Insights Podcast with your hosts, Franklin Grimberg and Edward Walton, where we discuss Microsoft 365 security and Azure security news and products. Recorded January 19th, 2022. Good afternoon, Franklin. Good afternoon, Brody. Good afternoon, Rod. And good afternoon to our special guest, St. Nicholas. How's everyone doing today?
Excellent.
Wonderful.
Excellent.
Really well.
There you go. Excellent.
Don't get
Loving
me
the
started.
size, everybody. A lot of
Yeah,
stuff.
so-
No,
This is the
Frank,
first
tell your
time-
story. Tell your story, Frank.
Frank has a story?
So I've decided after being in a meeting today with subject matter experts in the area of security, compliance, and identity that, I can no longer co-host the show because I don't meet those qualifications of even the meeting today. So, that's I'm going to have to step down and start a farm or work at a fast food joint because I'm just not qualified to co-host the show. That's all I have to say.
I think you'd
Well,
be a
cool.
meticulous
Yeah, I mean,
farmer. That's
at least
probably
you're
a good
honest.
move for you.
I can
Yeah.
take your honesty, I can appreciate that, right?
Yeah.
I don't think you're going to be eating much better at making sandwiches, but, I mean, you're a Popeye's chicken guy. I know that for a fact, right?
I kept sending emails out to you guys saying, okay, do you think this is right or wrong? And
Well,
Thanks
at
for
least you sent
supporting me.
emails out. I was
And,
getting emails and texts. He was like, Ed, I'm like, man, stop your whining. This is what you get for making the SC200 so hard for me. This is exactly what you get. Suffer. And then I put him on mute. You can put him in time. I don't want to hear Franklin. For him to text me.
I'll stick around until you guys kick me out. Let's just until this group here decides I'm not qualified, then I'll stick around. So
Shit.
you guys can
Quali-
vote me out of the podcast if you want.
Well, Ed, do you remember when Dennis Pike was on our team and he went through the Sentinel SC, whatever, I think it was SC 300 or 500 or whatever it was, and he was complaining to Chris. Chris had me on a call with him, and he was complaining to Chris about whoever designed this test is a misogynist. And Chris was like, Rin, you should turn on your camera. So I turned on my camera, and he looks at Dennis and he goes, talk to Rin. He wrote it.
It's so
All of a
funny.
sudden, Dennis starts doing this backpedaling. Rin, it was a really good test. Rin. I was like, dude, it's fine. I get it.
It's fine. That internal one we had to do. I talked to Dennis 2 weeks ago. He's doing well.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
He asked me when I was going to come up and visit him in North Carolina. I'm like, I don't know, man. He's like, I got free beer. I'm like, next week. I'll drop them next week.
Can make some time.
Well, I had a tough day, but I think Rod had a tougher day after the show last week. So
I'm still recovering. So for those who don't know, I had an unexpected visit to the hospital Wednesday night, right after the podcast last week, and was admitted. They didn't tell me anything until about an hour before my surgery, half hour before my surgery the next day, and it was a kidney stone, but they had to actually go in and pull it out. So it was a good time. And like Brody, everything's good. Can't wait to go back. So I'm looking forward to that. Finally got my appointment scheduled to get all the apparatus they installed in me to be pulled out in about a week or so. So I'm really looking forward to that too. So
Dude, just
all
do
good.
like you pull a tooth. You tie
and-
one
and
end
he-
to a doorknob, you tie the other end to the apparatus, and you slam the door.
Every time
And he-
I've
and
talked
he's
to these
still-
people, they ask me if I have a string hanging out. I'm like, if I had a string hanging out, this thing would be gone already. And so anyway, I don't know.
I got to say, and he's still jogging 3 hours a day.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, now he's 1 ounce lighter, so it's
Yeah, it was
Right?
1
Hey,
ounce. It was 5 millimeters. It was, I literally created my own pet rock. It was,
Ugh.
You gave birth, Rod.
I did.
Delicious.
I
Rod.
have a friend that is a doctor and has asked women who have both had kidney stones and have given birth, and they would prefer to give birth.
Yeah.
So I'm like, wow.
Yeah,
okay.
I've heard the same thing about a torn rotator cuffs.
Rotator cuff, not so bad. Well, I tore mine and the shoulder came out the socket and all that stuff. And yes, painful. and this was the bone came up out of the skin because I sheared my collarbone. It still wasn't as painful when I passed a kidney stone in my 20s.
Yeah.
I had my patella,
it's
my knee pop out. That's the worst I've ever had.
You know what's funny is people actually tune into this for a security podcast.
They do.
Right.
Yeah, man, this is where they come learn some. They let their hair down. Work has been beating on them all day. But hey, I want to brag a little bit. We talked about, New Year's, tenets, vectors, what we're going to do. And we tried to avoid using New Year's resolution as a term on here, right? I'm not resolving to do anything, right? But one of the things, Brody and Rod, before you guys came on, a running joke between Frank and I was, Ed, how big is your list going to get? You saying you're going to get to it and get to it. Frankly, can you make me host for 30 seconds and then we'll go ahead and get into the podcast?
I sure can. Once I learn how to use Zoom.
It happens.
Hear about this new one called Teams? It's supposed to be pretty cool.
Yeah, it's only for like sports.
So one of the things you guys know, I'm a giver, right? If I got stuff, especially when I think the guys are going to use it and everything. I think, Rin, I sent you Cisco switches, maybe a firewall, bunch of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Rod Trent, the same thing. I've given Frank some things.
Nothing to me. Nothing to me.
Man, stop it. I have.
Well, he was going to hand it to you over lunch, but
he decided to go eat Popeye's chicken. He went and deal with me. And Brody, I think that once you get your box, you'll be pleasantly surprised, right? I'm all about technically enabling guys.
Thank you.
But one of the things was, as I was moving to this house, I got all this equipment. So I donated a lot to schools, threw a bunch in the trash, recycled it responsibly. But I still had this hunking server left, right? It had like 100 gig, or it had 120 gig, but a lot of the DIMMs were bad for some reason. And, Dell used to use that ECC memory, which is garbage. You can't use it anywhere else, right? And so I built out this thing, which is going to be the starting point for the lab, Brody, Rod, and Frank, that I told I was going to build for us in this year. So check this out. Got it going.
Love the name, by the way, Unicron. Big fan.
So you'll find that a lot of my machine names are after Transformer characters. So Triptychon is my domain controller. I got a Win Attack. I got a Win Victim. I got a Kali. Shockwave is going to be on Ubuntu, Linux. Win Tools, I'm going to put a lot of the tools on it. And then Optimus Prime is just a 2016 server I'll probably just use, to be able to do that. And so I'm building out. So as we get this lab, I don't know what has happened to me this year. I've turned back into a geek. I finished up 2 Linux courses, 1 Python course. Obviously because I had COVID and I couldn't go anywhere.
I was going to be pretty disappointed if I didn't see Optimus Prime. So, you've restored my faith in humanity, Edward.
Well, you haven't seen the names of the other machines in my environment, right? So
Shockwave would be Linux too. Yeah, that's good.
Right.
Yeah. And so Soundwave,
the host.
I meant to name the host in the virtual machine nomenclature the same as what is actually coming from the actual guest on the host. Sometimes it transforms it back. Like Triptychon is actually Triptychon on that 2016 server, but for some reason it's not feeding back and there's a bug. But hey, I'm building this out. I'm going to build a lot of this on-premise stuff as people are really adopting and saying, yep, the cloud is here 10 years later. Hybrid is the way for the short-term future, and being able to test things both on-premise and the cloud. Got plenty of resources. And so I get to check this off. So the next thing to do is to get these multitude of firewalls I have, stew it back up. Palo Alto. Thank you, Matt Egan, for the PA box. 2 Cisco ASAs. A Fortinet. I think, Rod, I sent you a Fortinet.
Yep.
As he looks on the ground on his feet.
No, it's right here. It's right here.
So that's all I wanted to have. I want to share. I'm building the lab out.
Sweet.
The on-premise is easy. I'm going to go ahead and build the cloud piece out. And I've already got the credits and everything established for AWS and GCP and Oracle. Got some free credits from Oracle.
Wow.
Big shout out, Sean. Big shout out, Sean Sweeney.
I wouldn't say that publicly.
Whatever. And but you got to get all these clouds, right? You just can't think your cloud is the cloud. And so a lot of those detections are for that. So just wanted to show this out. I'm actually doing work, Frank. See, not sitting at home on my hands over the holidays. I told you I wasn't.
No, I know you're sweating to make sure you beat Brody. So
Sweating.
even though he took credit for the win on LinkedIn, but that's
Sure
okay.
He did. But he's conniving, you know. Brody, I defended you. I mean, when I tell you Rod and Franklin was going in on you on your little LinkedIn podcast, I said, hey, he did beat me. He beat me by one day, you know.
Thanks for letting me have my little victory lap. Appreciate it.
And we both passed. I'm done. They didn't delete my MCP profile again.
Yeah.
So I'm good to go.
You're double winning. Yeah, that was fun. Anyway, go ahead.
All right. With that being said, unless someone has any other important items, we're going to go ahead and give the floor over to our returning guest and friend of the show, Rin, better known as St. Nicholas. Rin was previously on the show talking about a workbook that he created for Microsoft Sentinel in regards to SOC efficiency and SOC analysts. He's subsequently has improved that workbook, and he'd like to come on and talk about the improvements of the workbook. So, Ren, I hand the floor over to you, good sir.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for having me. It's good to be with all of you. This is always fun to just come and shoot the breeze with you guys, talk a little security, but more or less just build on our friendships. So this is always good, and always meet new people like Brody. Right. So yes, right. Exactly. Honestly, we've had such great feedback regarding the SOC Process Framework and adoption rate. And then we turned out like 9 videos, almost 9 hours of content on how to deploy the SOC Process Framework. And it was so well received that we had a lot of folks come back and say, hey, this is wonderful. Have you thought about this? And so we started putting in, version 2 and what that would look like. And the more we started kind of building out what this was going to kind of shape into, I quickly realized that this thing was going to take on a whole new life. So version 2 is pretty robust. I think we're up to 8 workbooks, 14 watch lists, and a playbook. And they all interact with each other in a way that is pretty amazing. So we designed it in a way that it's a single pane of glass. So you launch the main workbook, and then all the other workbooks and watch lists and content pieces interact inside the workbook without you ever having to leave, which is kind of exciting. We really pushed the boundaries of workbooks this time around. As a matter of fact, we were doing some pretty cool stuff that the workbook product group manager came to me and said, hey, I'd like you to showcase what you've done to the product group and to some of the fields that are using workbooks, and show them what you're doing. To the point where we built an API ARM function. Well, we didn't build the function itself, but we leveraged the function inside the workbook so that we could call the watch lists and do automatic updates directly inside the workbook and push updates and changes to watch lists without you having to leave the workbook, going back into Sentinel, finding out where the watch list was, finding the row and the column that you wanted to update, and make those changes manually. It's all done through automation. All they have to do is pick what they want to do, and the API interactive ARM template runs on the back end and updates everything. And then, we've got auto refresh turned on so that all of those updates take effect and they all show up. We built in a maturity model. This is kind of cool. This is some more feedback we received was, hey, if we want to be able to see and score the maturity model of our SOC operations all up, what would that look like? And so we took the SOC CMMI. It's an open source platform, and it's got about 800 questions. And we took all of those questions, and then we wrote mathematics around it. We kind of snapped it to a model where you leverage the CMMI model of 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, 3 being kind of that optimal number that you're shooting for. And now it charts all of that, and we have spark lines that give you an overall trend of how the maturity is crafted as you're delivering on that. And then we also have pie charts on each of the different subcategories and on all of that. So that's all there. We built in a new incident response planning session so that you can go in and update your incident response and build out the planning for it. There's a whole new section on how to integrate with teams and do like shifts, shift work when you've got changes within your shift, work with an analyst, and as they're changing in and out, and what does that look like, and how do you automate incident response and incidents within Sentinel within that. So we built that out, and that leverages some of the tech community work that CXE and others have contributed to it. There's a whole new section on how to integrate our Defender stack all up, the M365 Defender stack, and how to bring all that to bear across the zero trust, how to bring it across incident response and planning, SOC tasks and maintenance, all of it. I mean, it's really kind of taken on a life of its own.
So I'm a fan of the workbook, but I'm a fan of you also. So it's sort of inherited, right? But one of the most interesting uses I've seen is that I was talking to a customer. I like to show them little tidbits. I was able to get your cold search preview flag to work. They like that, right? Yeah. There's a couple of things in it. But the thing that they used it for was they were evaluating an MSSP and was using your workbook and seeing if they had procedures that map to it. Like, how are you going to do this, right? And so when they asked can't mention the customer's name, when they asked the MSSP for documentation, all the questions were almost 100% geared about what was in your workbook. And they were like, insufficient. Try again. It's not in here. It's not detailed enough. And so I'm like, wow, that's a great use of this to go in as an evaluation. And I'm no longer on the partner side, but I've seen at least two partners that I know, because I know some of their higher ups that are using yours to go back and redo their internal documentation for response, how they do calls, all this stuff. So actually pretty cool. I'm a big fan of multi-use or something, right? I need to shame on me, I need to update it in my lab because I see it's not, but I'll get it done. So that's it. Good stuff. So, with this, give me a practical use, because you can't use everything inside of it. Have you had any other unique use cases of your workbook coming in, or is it just primarily being used as reference?
Actually, yes. So we've got a couple of UK customers that are fully deploying it and leveraging it to build out a SOC. So they want to leverage it as a foundational going forward, and then they're going to add to it. So we've got a few of those. We have several customers in the healthcare and life sciences that are pushing this out. We've even got some government agencies that are looking at it from a top down. Met with one today that was just, they loved it. We had a great conversation for about an hour and a half, talking about the maturity assessment as well as the incident response assessment, and how they can plan those things, and then how they can snap to some of the processes and the framework itself, and how they can update their own, the framework with their own nomenclature. So we talked a lot about that. And so what you're starting to see is an adoption on a wide spectrum of, maturity as well as lack of maturity of customers that need a place to start, or have something, but they've not necessarily thought through all of the processes and things that they need to do. And so with that assessment, they can go through and look at all of the questions it asks and how it dives into each of these different processes and procedures individually, to give them an opportunity to go back and reflect and really try to shoot for that defined integration that the maturity assessment gives them, so that they have stakeholder buy-in, they have, all of the things crafted and documented, it's defined, they know what those processes and procedures are, they know how they can train and upskill analysts, And so, yeah, it's a repository of knowledge for training, but it's also a placeholder for them to be able to drive maturity. And as I was walking them through that today, they were like, this is fantastic. How do we get our hands on it sooner rather than later? And that's what we're starting to see. We're starting to see the level of operation that this is bringing to Microsoft Sentinel in a way that we've not seen before. Because they're seeing the power that this is helping them drive the right processes, drive the right nomenclature back into their SOC operations, and consider things that they may not have considered within their business and what their business might need.
You can measure the success of a product if it can be used in something that wasn't initially designed for. Because I got a buddy. Big shout out to you, Brandon, at Splunk, that are using your workbook to go out and help customers define their SOC performance and everything else. And so I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know what the other competitors are using, if they have something similar to this. But once again, I was amazed to see what you built. People are standing up demo environments of Sentinel to be able to get to it, and then getting your stuff and then creating an SOP out of it, standard operating procedure.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. If are there any other improvements coming? Is this it, or there are some other things in the kitchen in the mind that you're trying to get done with it?
Well, I will tell you this. I'm partnered with the Defender for IoT team, and we're working on building out a new section of not only questions that's going to go into the assessment, but incident response planning and a section for IoT on the business side of IoT and OT, which is pretty cool. And we're taking a lot of their incident response procedures and actions, and we're building that also back into the playbook that is the Get SOC Actions playbook that ties back into this workbook. So that's probably going to be version 3. We've already started that work with them. Version 2, though, however, is going to be it's not going to be in the workbook gallery. We're actually going to put it into the content hub. It will be a one-click. And the reason we're doing that this time, and I'm partnering with the product group on that, is because there's so many interdependencies between all the content pieces. So this workbook calls that workbook. That workbook calls an ARM action with an API. It then calls in a watch list. It's updating a watch list. And because of the level of interdependencies we have, putting it into a content hub with a one-click install installs the entire framework. So they don't have to go find any of the watch lists and get them installed. They don't have to go find all the workbooks and install them one-on-one, right? It's going to deploy the entire solution for them. And that is how it's going to go going forward. It will become a content hub pack.
You know what I'd like to see in a content hub pack? Something that Rod and I was talking about today. There still is not, I found the layman's way of doing this. It's a heavy lift the first time. But I really wish that when we would click this, push to deploy, that somebody would enable all of the analytic rules rather than one at a time, right? Rod showed a trick or a process in the process that saves you about 2.7 seconds, right, per analytic rule. But yeah, I wish someone would be able to do that. I'll maybe share the next podcast how I sort of figured it out. It's not rocket science, but it's still not the optimal way of doing it. But yeah, very cool, very cool.
You know what I'd love to see, Edward? I'd love to see you take that idea and look at it per MITRE tactic and have a solution inside the content hub that says, oh, you want all the analytics that snap to, exfiltration, data exfiltration. You want credential access. You want, right? And then you can go in and cherry pick, right? Or things that map back to certain threat actors or certain threat landscapes that are pertaining to a business type. You can go in and be like, awesome, I want these things, and then have it auto light up within Sentinel as a one click instead of having to go in and find it all within the menu and have to go turn it on ad hoc by hand.
That's a cool thought. Yeah, that would be a really cool feature.
I thought along those same lines and actually started working on something like that. So I was stealing some ideas from like SOC Prime and trying to figure out how to do this, right? A lot of customers are going to be like, it doesn't cost me anything. No, turn it all on. whether that's a data source that exists or not, turn it on. Right? I like, okay, I'm good with that. But I do believe creating something like that to be able to say, deploy all the analytic rules that map to persistence or map to evasion or map to reconnaissance. And then an all up, right? And the thing is trying to figure out an exit clause in whatever process they're going to do, meaning that some of them in the analytic rules, which I've been beating my head on today, they will not enable because something's wrong with the logic. Either you don't have the applicable data sources necessary to make it work. Figure that out. Wasn't hard, but I'm like, it should still allow me to do the analytic rule, whether the logic in the query in the analytic rule is faulty. I would love some type of bypass for that, meaning, I know I don't have any of the analytic rules. Any of the data sources that would help this analytic rule correlate, but deploy it anyway. Don't give me an error. And I'm running to some of those, but I figured out a common denominator, and we'll talk about that maybe on the next, just us podcast, no guest. I see something that seems to be consistent across when I almost can tell you when an analytic rule is going to fail to deploy. I've been messing around with that for half a day. Rod, I think I reached out to you about that a little bit, right? You and I sort of asked you how many analytic rules you had and stuff like that.
You did. I have, yeah. Of course, I don't have an active environment. I still have 300 rules though, but I literally turn on everything just for demos
and turning everything on. Believe it or not, I had a customer that says, "Well, I'm not going to turn that on. We don't use AWS." I was like, "Man, it doesn't hurt anything. Just in case you do, you have a landing. Turn it on." And someone had already set up a connection from their Azure environment to AWS he didn't know about.
Classic.
One of the dev guys. Of course, it's one of the dev guys.
Weird. Yeah.
And so it happens all the time.
Well, hopefully someday in a perfect world, you wouldn't have to even create an analytics rule, a scheduled analytics rule, because it would all be done by ML and anomaly rules and everything else. So they would all just be on.
Well, let me ask this quick question. Now, I don't want to deviate from the show, which is about his security operations center workbook. Does anyone have any idea of what the blowback, repercussions, negative would be that if you stood up Sentinel, all the analytics rules were turned on by default? I don't think cost is a thing.
No, cost not a thing. It's just I personally would like to know, and with the Sentinel Health preview that we have this week, you can monitor which analytics rules are running and which ones aren't. I would just like to know which ones, because I will tell you, we really need to clean up our analytics rules because we have some that are doing a lot of duplicate things. Right. And I think some of those might butt heads. And from a scheduling perspective in that clustering, I forget what the compute is for that. Anyway, there's a thing. Just need to know that they would all run and produce what they're supposed to produce and all that good kind of stuff.
So Rin, I have a question about a particular aspect inside of your workbook.
Sure.
You have one called SOC incident actions, right? Everybody wants to know to be told what to do. What do I do? What is my SOP? What is my response? How do you go about selecting which ones do you put inside your SOC action? Because I'm reading some. It says suspicious PowerShell command. It says action to take. An anomalous scheduled task was created. I'm just going to browse through a little bit. Internal brute force attack. You give 5 things to go do. I'll name one more and I get the floor to you. 2 more. Coming from an MCAS, type of mindset. Anomalous IP address, right? That's one. And then I think the last one you have in here is called failed SSH brute force attack. How do you go about? You can't account for everything. So how do you choose about which ones you put in?
Yeah, this is a placeholder. to give them kind of an idea of what SOC actions they should be thinking about in regards to the alerts that you see there. Some of which are coming from some of my experience, some of which is coming from Microsoft All Up, from DSRE and other organizations within Microsoft that have worked with our product groups to drop in certain actions and things that are now starting to bubble up in Defender for Endpoint or in Defender for Cloud. You're starting to see some of those repositories now starting to light up. And before that happened, we had customers that would ask us, what do we do? How do we take these alerts and how do we action on them? What do we do as far as an operations and a process that we should take? And so we started taking all of that data and consolidating it into that page so that it's kind of a placeholder, right? And then the way we talk about it is, hey, these things that you're seeing in here are subject to be updated by you, by us, by whatever. Look at them, look at the way that we're talking about how these actions need to fit into the particular alert, look at how they need to fit into your business, your vertical, and make decisions on whether or not those actions are pertinent, or if you need to be modifying those actions to take other actions or add to them. And so then what we did was we started on that page, it's all marked down, and we decided, you know what, that's great. It's a placeholder, and it's certainly a good start to consider. We put it all into a watch list, and that's where the birth of the playbook came into fruition, where now the playbook can go query that watch list, and they can modify and build in and remove and make changes on the fly to those actions. And anytime that rule fires, that can be automatically updated with those new actions and things per the watch list. And so now it's a lot more adhesive and agile to the customer's needs. The other thing we did then was there's another section in the workbook called the incident analysis. And we took all of the findings within the incident analysis and we added that as a blanket into to the playbook so that if an alert hasn't been onboarded and they don't have step-by-step action items to take that's prescriptive, this incident analysis takes all of that and asks the analyst questions that they should go consider and actions that they should consider taking through the questions that we ask them through that incident analysis. So we made it very comprehensive in a blanket approach. But it all started with just kind of markdown as a placeholder for things to get them, thinking about actions that they should take, all from consolidating actions that we had seen across our product stack in our portfolio that really wasn't bubbled up yet. Right now, you're starting to see things come to fruition in Sentinel itself. You're starting to see Defender for Endpoint show up that, and there's some new, things that the product group's working on that side, which is exciting. But that's really why we built it the way we did is to still complement the products while giving customers an agile way to make it their own.
Agile not meaning to the developmental framework, just agile meaning quicker.
Quicker. Yep.
Quicker. Fast,
give them the ability to think about it, right?
Mm-hmm. Sentinel is no longer two Sims walking to a bar. One says where you live, I say the cloud, the other one says you're homeless, right? Sentinel is serious now.
And people are having to take
that joke, but I loved it.
Hey, I made that one up. Do. So, with this adoption of this in this SOC, let me ask you just a general question. Who's this really geared for? Right? Because when I hear SOC, I immediately hear headcount, a physical location, and a bunch of other things. Yeah. In my environment, no shade on you. I've renamed everything you had in your workbook from SOC to either SOP or SOE, meaning Security Operation Platform, meaning your SOC is wherever your person is that has an edge browser, right? There are going to be some physical resources, but they're not necessarily mandatory to run your security operation platform. And then this week I started thinking about, okay, let's not say platform, which means that it sort of locks you in and makes people think that, hey, you have to be all up in Azure to make this work. I changed it to SOE, Security Operations Environment, right? Because that environment can be a lot of things. But I've heard people, especially SMB, SOC, oh man, we can't afford to be hiring people to sit here and look at this and that. That's why we started to have an MSP. I'm like, well, first of all, the MSP is not your security partner. You need somebody, they need another letter, right? How many of you guys remember Electric Company? Letterman?
Yeah.
Pull out the thing, stick a Letterman on there. Brody, you too young for that. You won't.
That's awesome. I like the easy reader, but that's
easy reader. So how do you go about lowering the anxiety, apprehension of folks like, well, we don't really own a SOC. How does this help me? Can I use this just to create some procedures and something else?
Absolutely.
Or am I wrong? Or do people still hear the word SOC and they go, ooh?
I think you nailed it. I think there are those that want to see it as an SOP or SOE. I think there are those, though, that are still, they still want to hear that SOC terminology to a degree. And that's okay. I'm not married to one terminology or another. Honestly, it's more about building a framework that anyone can adopt. One of the things that we did is there's 3 new buttons in there or 4 new buttons at the very top of the workbook, and it's kind of interesting the way that we were thinking about that. If you want, I mean, I can even share my screen and just kind of show you why we thought about this, because we thought about a lot of customers that are coming to us from a lack of personnel, a lack of maturity, and a lack of people. And what does that look like? And so there are 4 buttons called SOC, team, part-time, small.
Are you sharing your screen?
I can. Let me.
Frank, you probably need to make him the host.
Already did.
Frank, make him the host.
Oh.
Make him the host. Yeah,
Thanks, host Frank.
You guys are too slow. Come on.
Host disabled participant. Oh, you disabled it, Frank.
Oh, you didn't say the magic word.
Oh, please.
Now.
Yeah, every time I click screen sharing, it gives me a host disabled participant screen sharing.
It's okay. We'll edit this out. Feel free to swear at Zoom.
You need to have passed SC 6000.
There it is. Yeah.
That came out, eh? I thought it was in beta.
SC what? 6,000?
Yeah, you didn't hear about that one?
I wish our listeners could see the facial expression.
It's a long running sore subject around here. And evidently, my co-hosts don't take my sensitivity and my emotions into factor when they make these comments, but that's okay. Brody.
Okay, try now.
Everything's gonna be blamed on Brody.
Sure, I'm the consultant here. Blame everything on me.
There it is. It's working now.
Good stuff.
Hey, let me know if you can see this.
Ooh, yes, we can.
Love the dark mode.
Thank you. I'm going to move this out of the way.
Yeah, let me move mine out of the way so I can
So
look at it.
We built these 4 buttons: part-time, small, medium, and large. And what we also did was, if you'll notice, it looks like a blue hat person. The way the buttons are now designed is it's an 8-bit blue hat. But in here, and I've got to give a huge shout out to Mark Simos. Mark Simos helped me craft a lot of the images and the things that you're going to see in here. So what we did was we really wanted to help small, or those enterprises that don't have a lot of staff or have someone. And where do they focus? What do they do? And what does that SOC rapid modernization plan, or RAMP, what does that look like? What do they focus on? Where do they streamline? How do they reduce that process toil? And how do they look at refining their security operations? And so we built out the growth path of security operations from a part-time analyst and what those duties are, where they should focus. So as they go from part-time, because this is part-time, I can click on small. And this is that workbook in a workbook. integration I was telling you about. So I've not left that main workbook. It's popped open this workbook as a view inside the main workbook. And then I can see what my growth path looks like as I move from part-time to small, and what areas am I focused on? What things do I focus on the people and process side? Where do I focus on tooling? How do I focus on support functions? What does that look like as far as full-time, part-time? Where am I doing on triage, investigation, hunting, right? Like, and what tools do I integrate as I'm moving through this, through this journey of building out my operations. So that's what we did. We really focused on that to help make this more applicable to a wider audience. Hopefully that kind of helps answer that question, Edward.
That looks amazing, Rin.
It does. I shame on Edward for not clicking on that and understanding that you guys have updated that piece. I updated my workbook inside my lab. Unfortunately.
Yeah, you want to go to version 1.3 because this hasn't been rolled out yet.
Okay.
That's super cool.
I need to grab it from the Git, sounds like.
It's not in Git yet. Again, we're building it as a content hub. So it's going to be a solution. And I'm in the process of doing that. As a matter of fact, I can show you, right? I've got, here's the SOC Process Framework in a solution, and we're building out all the workbooks, playbooks, watch lists. It's getting pushed in there. So it's not quite all committed yet. I will show you this too. See all of these workbooks, large, part-time, incident response planning, SOC maturity, all of these now fit into this one workbook. They're individual on their own, but they're called from the main workbook. So they're dependent on the main one.
Really? So those are manifesting inside of the workbooks in Sentinel. I mean, let me see that though.
Yeah, so when I click part-time, that's what it's doing, is it's actually opening that workbook as a view inside this workbook. So I haven't left the pane to single pane of glass functionality that we've built in. So it's a workbook inside a workbook.
Mm-hmm. So I'm actually in my environment and I'm looking for your SOC. Here it is right here. And it doesn't give me the option to update. So I guess I will have to grab it manually from you.
Yeah, because we're in the process of creating a deployment version to go out to the community and field.
Okay, I'll get the JSON from you.
Yeah. The other thing I'll show you, I talked about it, is this is that SOC maturity model. So you have the graphs and the spark lines at the top here, but this is where all those 800 questions live, is across, business, people, process, services, and technology, with their scoring and all the mathematics being calculated for you, and then the table of contents so that you can see where that at. And then what's cool is we've taken that feature of a workbook inside of a workbook. Check this out. So I'm going to go choose my SOC maturity assessment. So that's now set as my watch list to modify. I'll click this button. It's going to open that workbook in this workbook view. It pushes the parameter from this workbook to this workbook. So that's an interdependency between the two workbooks. Then I have a filtering. So let's say I want to work on reporting. And then it's going to auto filter down to the questions that I want to do in the watch list. Do I provide KPI reports? And then I can come in here and set, is that set to initial, managed, defined, quantitatively managed, or optimized based on the score. So now I can say, okay, well, this right now is set to a 0. This is what it's used to do. Do I provide this? I do, and it's actually defined. So I'm going to set that to a 3. Then it's got my arm action. I say run arm action. It puts, and you can see here, there's the question. It's now changed to a yes. My 3 is now, my 0 is now 3, and my 5. And now it's done. And if I had this auto refresh turned on, which I can set that to, and then I can refresh this, and then all of the scoring up above and all of the scoring down here is auto updated once you push that through the API and the workbook inside of a workbook. So we have 100% pushed the boundaries of what workbooks can do within Sentinel.
Very cool. Very, very cool. Once again, make sure I get V13 so I can put it in mine and meet upon it. And this has been super informative. I've seen the updates, seeing the upgrades, seeing the thoughts you guys have put inside of how do I make this better? At least give me a starting point, because a lot of times, customers will quickly say, I don't know where to start. What's the best practice? I'm like, there is no best practice. You got to do what is relevant to how you do business every day, right? There are some common criteria, but I don't believe in the term best practices, right? Yeah, and let's go on with that. So let me ask one more question. I was actually inside your workbook here. Give me a second. Oh, never mind. Well, let me ask you this. Were you also the author of the Security Operations and Efficiency workbook?
I was not. That was built by the product group.
Okay. I thought that was either you or Clive that did that, but okay. All right. Very, very cool.
Clive and I have contributed to it, though.
Okay. Maybe that's where I remember it from, you guys being part of that. Any other goodness you want to share, sir, as we get ready to get toward the back end of the podcast?
Not really. Just, stay tuned for this coming to mainstream here. Hopefully within, the next couple of weeks, we're pushing pretty heavy to get this out and rolled out. There's just a lot of stuff. There's a lot of content. And the nice thing then is, because it'll go in Content Hub, anytime there's an update now, you'll update it through like the Content Hub and drive that, which that's going to be awesome, because you're not going to have to go deploy a watch list. You're not going to have to go download a CSV file and upload it. The Content Hub is going to do that for you, and it's going to prep everything for you and build all of the dependencies, because there's some trickiness to the way workbooks inside workbooks work and the way the APIs are called, because there's these interdependent ID, these identifiers, and each workbook has a unique identifier. And so crafting all of that in has been a challenge, but very rewarding, because now we're going to be able to give our customers a one-click install and have it just build it out for them. And that's exciting.
So, I'm always about what's the hustle? What's the next big thing? How do I make this better? How do I monetize it? Right.
Right.
I've seen you publish several places, but I've never really seen a book from you. This looks like this could be a great starting point for you writing a book. SOC Operation Efficiency for Azure Sentinel. Thought about ranking a book? I'll technically edit it for you.
Maybe Microsoft Sentinel instead of Azure Sentinel.
Whatever.
I have. I've got a couple of folks that have approached me on, considering what that might look like. I was in the process of writing a threat hunting white paper that I've had some back and forth on maybe we need to make it a book. Maybe we need to make it, I don't know. Like, I thought about it. I don't know. Maybe that's my next chapter in life. I don't know.
Talk out a band about it. I like some contribution credits to it. I help out. I can check to make sure you got enough periods everywhere. And go like that, right?
I love that. Yeah.
All right. Well, Rin, thank you so much for coming on. I know you are extremely busy, but you never fail to help when you can. And then, the work doesn't stop. Please don't stop working. And I'll let you close out if anything else you want to share. If not, we'll go ahead and end this podcast on this fine Wednesday in January.
No, I gotta just tell all of you thank you. Been building some great relationships with you, as well as Frank. Rod and I have had lots of different conversations, and just the things that you guys are doing for the community is fantastic. So, 2 thumbs up for me. And I think what your listeners are hearing is great. I think you guys are providing a little bit of a reprieve, especially through some of the pandemic and things that are happening. I will tell you, my wife, I don't know if any of you are Scrubs fans. I'm a huge Scrubs fan. And my wife and we were traveling for some medical testing because, Rod, I empathize. I was born with chronic kidney disease. I lived with it my whole life. And so we were going out for some x-rays and ultrasounds, and they were poking and prodding me to draw blood and stuff. And and she had stumbled across the Scrubs podcast. And they do a walkthrough, like episode by episode, and they bring in, who's in the episode, and they're talking to the producer, and they're talking to, other actors and actresses. And I was really chuckling and enjoying that. And I'm not much of a podcast fan, but now that I'm kind of seeing how these podcasts are providing this level of information and doing so in not only a harmonious way, but a hilarious, right? It's entertaining, it's engaging, it's fun. So thank you for having me on, because this is awesome. And you get to, I get to showcase some of my passion. So I appreciate what you guys are doing, and just the relationships that I've got to build with each of you. So, and Brody, it's nice to meet you. So
nice to meet you too, bud. We'll keep her going. Thank you for the kind
words of the pod. Thank you for the kind words of the podcast. I mean,
absolutely.
We out to do the good work. I like to think that, the Microsoft Security Insights podcast is a table of contents for the next chapter in your career.
And our casting manager will get back to you.
Casting manager will get back to you.
And you're the only one that voted to keep me on the podcast. Thank you.
Everybody else is like, vote him off the island. He's gone.
We tried bribing him. He wouldn't take it.
He wouldn't leave. Well, everyone, thanks so much. Stay tuned for some upcoming guests. We got some good things in the works. Next week, we're actually going to have a non-Microsoft individual. We're actually going to have a vendor come on board to talk about their product and how it works with some of the Microsoft security workloads. So stay tuned for that. Should be a pretty good podcast next week. Thank you.
Awesome. Take care, everyone. Thanks.